The golden afternoon sun slanted across the tranquil surface of Moonlight Lake as Karen stomped onto my private dock, her bulky frame rocking the weathered planks with each furious step, and her voice sliced through the hum of cicadas as she demanded to strip down and swim in nothing but her entitlement. My heart raced when she threw a beach towel onto the dock and peeled off her sundress in one defiant motion, exposing skin that glowed with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting her way. A hush fell over my small gathering friends sipping lemonade on lawn chairs. The crackle of the barbecue paused mid-sizzle before I spoke, my voice steady but firm, telling her that nude swimming was strictly prohibited on my property. The sun glinted off her furious eyes as she huffed that I had no right to impose rules on communal waters, that homeowners had every right to wild expression under the sky, and that I was violating her personal freedom by insisting she don a swimsuit. The scene felt surreal, Karen's massive silhouette backlit by the setting sun, her chest heaving, as she screamed about oppression and voyeurism, her words echoing across the lake like a rallying cry for the entitled. Suppressing the surge of rage at her accusation, I explained that my cabin was outfitted with surveillance cameras installed after a burglary last year and that the footage recorded every corner of the property, including the dock and surrounding shoreline, to protect against theft and wildlife incursions. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating as comprehension dawned. She stammered that I couldn't possibly record her while she exercised her rights, that the HOA had no say in public waters, and that my invasive cameras violated her privacy. I calmly pointed out that the cameras were clearly marked with signs on the dock entrance, warnings she had ignored when she marched out that afternoon. Her face flushed as the gathering crowd murmured in agreement, several neighbors pointing at the yellow warning sign anchored in the sand. Karen's pride crumbled like dry bark in a fire. She looked around for sympathy but found only stony faces and silent phones capturing her meltdown. Seconds later, a car rolled up. Deputy Marshal Bryce, known for his dry humor and steadfast sense of justice, had been invited for a weekend retreat and arrived just in time to witness Karen's tirade. He stepped onto the dock, badge glinting against his uniform, and said with a half-smile, "Ma'am, this is private property. Cameras are a legal deterrent. If you want to swim, head to the public beach 2 miles north." Karen's lips trembled as she shot him a glare that could wilt steel. She fumbled for her phone, presumably to record a confrontation with law enforcement, but Deputy Bryce shook his head gently. "No need to document obvious trespassing and public indecency," he added, turning to the crowd. "Let's respect property lines and personal boundaries." A ripple of applause met his words, and Karen's squat frame sagged under the weight of public censure. Retreating to the shore, Karen erupted once more, accusing me of hypocrisy for preaching personal liberty while wielding surveillance like a tyrant's tool. I stood my ground, unwavering, and explained that no law protected nudity on private docks, but that my cameras were designed to ensure safety and accountability, values I prized over exhibitionist entitlement. As I spoke, my sister emerged from behind the cabin with a surprise twist. She carried a vintage photo album filled with images from Mom and Dad's cottage before the HOA existed, pictures of carefree summers when families swam in the nude without a worry. Flipping to a sepia-toned shot of 2 laughing teenagers diving off the dock, she held it up for all to see. "Look," she said softly. "This was before modern overreach and technological surveillance. We lived by respect and trust, not bylaws and cameras." The crowd fell silent once more, absorbing the nostalgia. Karen's cheeks burned brighter than the sun above. Her entitlement wavered as she realized the deeper truth. Boundaries and privacy need balance, not extremes. Just then, a distant roar rose from the tree-lined, an unexpected character bursting onto the scene. My neighbor, legendary local kayaker and environmentalist Marcos Chen, paddled his bright red kayak into view, having heard the commotion across the water. He stepped onto the dock with waterproof camera gear strapped to his back and announced he was filming a documentary on the lake's history and how communal respect had shaped its legacy. His footage, he said, would feature both responsible stewardship and the importance of personal choice. With a wink to the crowd, he added, "But no one wants to watch my documentary if it's just endless Karen tantrums." Laughter rippled through the onlookers, and Karen's shoulders slumped as she became the unwitting star of the very film she decried. The crescendo of confrontation peaked as Karen tried to reclaim control, threatening to sue for invasion of privacy and defamation. Deputy Bryce stepped forward, the weight of his badge heavier than any weapon, and recited state statutes on private surveillance, indecent exposure, and trespassing. He warned that false claims and frivolous lawsuits could land a person in contempt of court, subject to fines and legal fees far exceeding any HOA penalty. Karen's threats shriveled under the reality of unyielding law enforcement. She faltered, the clang of her own convictions echoing hollowly as the crowd closed ranks around me and the deputy. In the aftermath of her collapse, neighbors gathered on the docksum wrapped in towels, others still holding sunscreen bottles, and spoke of unity, respect, and the need for compassionate rules that protect both personal freedom and communal safety. Karen retreated to her car, her tantrum turning to sobs as she realized her ego had made her blind to the rights of others. The once omnipotent HOA enforcer was now a cautionary tale, caught on cameras she had tried to mock. As the sun set, I invited the deputy, Marcos, and my friends to join a lakeside bonfire. We toasted to balance, the power of choice tempered by responsibility, the necessity of boundaries held by trust, and the simple truth that sometimes refusing a naked swim is the most liberating act of all. That night, sleep came easier for most around Moonlight Lake, everyone except Karen, who lay awake in her oversized SUV, replaying every humiliating moment as if trapped in a loop. Inside her cabin, I and my guests drifted toward quiet reflection, embers of our lakeside bonfire glowing like distant stars. When dawn broke, a hush settled across the docks as rumors spread of Karen's plan to file a defamation suit, claiming her reputation had been shredded by my cameras. I gathered my calm and accompanied Deputy Marshal Bryce to the county courthouse, where we delivered footage documenting every moment of her trespass, indecent exposure attempt, and the explicit warning signs she'd ignored. The judge reviewed the tapes, noting how they clearly supported my stance on privacy and property rights. With a swift gavel, her claim was dismissed as frivolous, and she was ordered to pay court costs. By midday, news had rippled through the community and beyond. Karen's lawsuit had backfired, cementing her image as an entitled bully undone by her own reckless defiance. Online forums buzzed with debates. Some argued privacy trumped personal freedom. Others insisted that surveillance culture threatened spontaneity. Regardless, the tide had turned. I returned to Moonlight Lake for another weekend gathering, where neighbors greeted me with relief and solidarity. Children laughed as they paddled stand-up boards, and swimmers dipped carefully into the waters clad in modest wetsuits and swimsuits alike, their choices respected without question. The HOA called an emergency meeting to address the chaos. I attended, sitting among residents who once sat in silent discomfort during Karen's reign. The agenda: draft clear guidelines balancing communal values with individual liberties. Heated discussions erupted on topics from surveillance signage to designated clothing optional zones far from private cabins. When the floor opened to Karen, who arrived with hesitant steps, she stepped to the podium, shoulders hunched, and offered a shaky apology. She admitted her arrogance had blinded her to the needs of others, that her vision of unfettered freedom had crossed into disrespect and invasion. The room held its breath as she spoke, the weight of her confession filling the silence. Many residents exchanged wary glances, uncertain whether to accept her remorse or remain guarded. In an unexpected twist, Marcos Chun proposed a compromise: designate a small, fenced-off cove on the lake's far shore as a Freedom Cove, where clothing-optional swimming would be permitted, provided clear signage warned approaching boaters and private property owners. He outlined plans for community volunteers to install respectful signage and maintain privacy screens, combining personal choice with considerate boundaries. The proposal's logic and sensitivity resonated, earning nods and murmurs of approval. Even the HOA president, traditionally strict, expressed support, calling it a thoughtful balance of liberty and respect. The vote was called, and the motion passed by a comfortable margin. A ripple of applause filled the meeting room as the new bylaw took shape. Moonlight Lake would officially recognize both protected private spaces and a designated public zone for uninhibited expression, with cameras clearly marked and privacy assured for those who wished it. In one fell stroke, the community had converted conflict into constructive policy. Meanwhile, Karen watched from the back of the room, her posture straightening as she realized her downfall had prompted meaningful change. She approached the stage and thanked everyone for their willingness to find middle ground. Her voice no longer trembled. Instead, it carried a note of humility and resolve. "I overstepped," she admitted. "But I also care deeply about our community. I want to help keep it safe and respectful for everyone." The sincerity in her tone softened even the hardest hearts, and a few neighbors offered cautious smiles. The following weekend, when the first official Freedom Cove volunteer shift began, Karen volunteered alongside Marcus, Deputy Bryce, and even my sister. They painted signs, planted privacy hedges, and unloaded cameras so clearly marked that no one could mistake their purpose. Karen moved with a careful diligence, as though atoning with each brushstroke. Children waved as they kayaked by, their joy undimmed by past controversies. That evening, an inaugural Freedom Cove celebration lit lanterns around the designated area. Swimmers of all ages and comfort levels emerged from changing tents, some laughing beneath the stars in swimsuits, others fading in and out in towels before diving in. Cameras watched from a respectful distance, reminding swimmers of safety rather than policing. Music drifted across the water. Voices joined in unisono longer of confrontation, but of community. As I stood on the shore, watching Karen laugh with neighbors she once scorned, I reflected on the journey. How one woman's blow-up had galvanized us to clarify our values, and how forgiveness and pragmatism had healed old wounds. In the glow of the lanterns, Karen, never known as Karen anymore, approached and handed me a wooden plaque, freshly carved. For every boundary respected, a bond is strengthened. No camera caught my unguarded smile, because sometimes the most meaningful moments happen off record. I raised a glass with Karen and the others under the moonlit sky. The night air carried a gentle lullaby of frogs and whispers as the last lanterns dimmed around Freedom Cove, signaling the close of yet another day where individual expression and communal respect danced in harmony. I wandered along the shoreline, toes sinking into the cool sand, memories replaying in my mind like an old home movie. I thought of Karen, now going by Kara, standing beside me under that first moonlit gathering, forging a tenuous piece from the rift she had ripped open. Moments later, soft applause drifted from the nearby pavilion, where neighbors had gathered to witness the unveiling of a commemorative mural. Painted on weather-resistant panels, it depicted the sequence of our saga. A rigid fence, a furious figure, tranquil cameras, and finally a vibrant cove where swimmers thrived in joyous freedom. Children gasped at the lifelike brushstrokes of Kara hesitating at the water's edge, her posture shifting from defiance to revelation. At the center stood a bold inscription: "From conflict, community, Moonlight Lake, 2025. I joined the crowd and took in the transformation. Tables adorned with fresh berries and homemade lemonade, volunteers handing out free swim caps imprinted with the mural's hashtag, local musicians tuning acoustic guitars for an impromptu concert. Kara approached, carrying a small wrapped package. Her new confidence replaced the old arrogance. She met my eyes and handed me the gift. Inside was a handcrafted wooden journal, its cover etched with the words, "Lessons Beneath the Surface." She explained that she had chronicled every step of her journey from the moment she stormed the dock to her first volunteer shift at Freedom Cove. The pages brimmed with reflections, apologies, and aspirations for future growth. Tearfully, she said, "I want to remember how easily entitlement slips into ignorance, and how community saved me from myself." The crowd fell silent as she spoke, the weight of her sincerity pressing on the night's calm. Then, in a surprising gesture, Deputy Bryce stepped forward to accept a page from the journal. He read aloud Kara's final entry: "Respect is the true shoreline. Without it, boundaries are meaningless." His voice echoed against the water, and the gathered neighbors erupted into warm applause that resonated like rolling waves. Later, as the campfire crackled and guitars strummed, I found Marcus and we shared a knowing nod. "We built something lasting," he said quietly, tossing a pine cone into the flames. "Not just a bylaw, but a bond." I smiled, raising my own cup of lemonade in toast to his wisdom. In those closing hours, Moonlight Lake felt less like contested turf and more like a living organism, each ripple in the water, a testament to compromise. Each star overhead a reminder that freedom's glow is brightest when shared. And Kara, no longer the tyrant but a steward, stood at the cove's entrance, offering towels and guidance to late-night swimmers, her smile genuine and humble. As dawn painted the sky in pastel hues, I took one last walk along the shore. A soft breeze carried the scent of fresh pine and possibility. I paused beside a small wooden placard, newly installed beside the mural. Every boundary we honor strengthens the home we share. My heart swelled, knowing that our story had reached its final verse. Now it's your turn. Did our community's journey prove that true liberation lies in mutual respect, or do you believe boundaries hinder the human spirit? Share where you stand, and let's continue this conversation beneath the same sky that witnessed our transformation.